welcome everybody. I want to welcome those members that are joining us online. This is the time where you go ahead and get a cup of coffee or get yourself a soda. For those that are in the room here, go ahead and get some food and sit down at a table, and we'll actually start the formal part of this in about 10 minutes. Thank you. Swanson. Yeah, we're going to catch the people who didn't yet. Yep. No, not a chance. I wish I did. I'm just wearing bigger shirts. That's what I do. I'm trying, but it's not working. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Alan Poncini, for those who don't know me, and I want to welcome everybody today. This is actually our fourth meeting. It's great to see so many people, and just as a way of updating everybody, we've had, our first meeting started out with 34 people. We had 23, 25 at the next two, and now this one's going to be well over 30. So it's great. It's really good to see the energy. These meetings are really important to us. We've told you lots of times we can't do it by ourselves. We definitely need to hear from everybody. Let's remind us of that question that we talk about that leads us. Led by the Holy Spirit, how can Island Lutheran best position itself to be used by our Lord to transform as many lives as possible for Christ? Led by the Holy Spirit. We know that he talks to all of us. We know that he talks to each of us in his own way, and we know that's why we hear things differently, right? And what I hear from the Holy Spirit is not the same thing Sam hears, or that Holly hears, or any of the rest of us, right? And that's why it's important that we ask you to share with us. What are you thinking? What's your opinions? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings, right? So let's start with a prayer. Let us pray. Father, thank you for allowing us to gather in your name as we consider your charge. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. Today, we're taking some time to consider one of the many steps in our discipleship process. Allow us to be willing to speak openly, to listen intently, and to continue to gather information to hear and then ultimately do your will. We know you speak to all of us and that you use each of us in ways that please you. Guide us through the future challenges, and let us be reminded that you always provide all that we need to live your way. Today, we ask that you are with each of us as we grow in our own discipleship and know that thy will be done. Amen. So the construct for today's meeting is obviously got a little food today. It's kind of nice. And you're gonna eat and we're gonna talk as you're doing this, and it's fine. We're going to start with receive. We're going to start by listening. We're going to ask you a couple of questions. We're going to have you talk about them amongst yourselves at your table, and then we're going to share with everybody. No bad ideas. Everything that comes up, it's all good, right? We're just taking down ideas. It's brainstorming, so we're not looking to cut anything down, and then we'll kind of summarize it up and move on to the next one. After a few questions and some time, we'll take a little bit of a break. And then we're going to come back, and then we're going to be in a sharing mode. So we keep telling you that there's a lot of work going on, and there really is. And so today we're going to share with you all some of that work and some of the results of that work so that we kind of start getting a feel for what reality is and what it really looks like for us. And then we're going to deploy. We're going to deploy in the Spirit. What is it that we all need to be doing to support this path and to support our growth? And we'll talk about that at the very end. So that's our construct. Again, it's pretty simple. We're looking for open dialogue. It's been great so far, and we'll continue to do that. So the last thing I want to introduce you to is our parking lot. Okay, the parking lots, for those of you in business and consulting, you've probably seen this, but it's a really useful mechanism. And today we're talking about lease. So when we bring up topics that really aren't lease, we're going to put them in the parking lot. And we use the parking lot to make sure that the things that we bring up we know are of interest. We make sure they get to the right people. So in the coming weeks, we're going to have meetings that talk about land and talk about purchase. And so if there's stuff that comes up here that need to be considered in those meetings, we capture it here. If there's stuff that needs to go to an ongoing ministry team or an operational aspect, we'll capture it there. But the parking lot is for things that we don't really have the time, because we're going to use the full time today to talk just about lease. So, but we don't want to lose thoughts. That's what the parking lot is. Right now, I'm going to invite Adrian to come up, and Adrian's going to introduce our first question, and then we'll talk about it again. Open dialogue, talk amongst yourselves, and then I'll bring us back together and facilitate writing up everything we know. So, Adrian?
I think I know almost everyone in the room. I'm Adrian Sutton, And as Alan said, we've been working together to facilitate these meetings. And each meeting has kind of taken on its own personality. People have really responded with genuine ideas that they've been thinking about. And each meeting we've had, we have heard ideas that hadn't occurred to us before. So each of you having a voice is so important. The first part is going to feel a little bit redundant, but kind of work with us and you'll see how it evolves over the course of the 3 rounds that we're going to do. The first round, where you'll talk with your neighbors at your table, is why should we, could we consider a lease option? Just very simply that, why? I'll give you a few minutes to talk at your table, and then we'll start generating responses. Thank you so much.
But they're all talking.
Yeah. I think it kind of relaxes them with the
Yeah.
food. We have Steve to help us popcorn.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, we'll have to jump around a little bit and get Steve moving.
He's ready.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll bring it back up to here. And now I just want to remind everybody that we do have streaming, so we have our online community as well. And so what's going to happen is it's going to be a little different than we've done in the past couple, in that I need to make sure that we get you a mic before you share your ideas so that the people online can hear as well. All right, so I need your help to raise your hand and then share your ideas, and then we'll go from there, okay? So, who wants to share first?
One of the things we discussed was it allows us to Jim. It allows us.
Just keep close. Turn
Oh.
Yeah, don't point it towards the ceiling.
Okay. It allows us to jumpstart the. Okay. Jumpstart the discipleship without a long-term financial obligation.
Okay, so we got the jumpstart the discipleship in
Correct.
the new area.
And then the second piece. The second piece was to help build that community that would be supporting that area to help build it prior to the long-term commitment.
And that's an important one, right? Help build a community in that area that's going to be that future core, right? The future center of what's going to be out there. So build the core. Go ahead. Who's next?
Not towards the ceiling. I got
We need to get you a mic, okay? You give me that.
Just stay close to it.
Ken, our table said not only does, building on what Jim said, this allows us to go as
Okay.
opposed to if we wait to build, we're not going.
Right. Okay. So it allows us to go now, right? We already know, and Jeff will talk about this a little bit later. But going, Steve back there, going is gonna take years. If we had a property tomorrow, it'd still take years before we'd be able to go. So leasing allows us to go now. Go ahead, Tess.
I'm just wondering about if we, because there's teenagers, and are we doing the the youth group?
Okay,
Again.
so I'm gonna remember that, and when we get to there's another question coming up where that's gonna be really appropriate. So I'll remember that comment, and I'll bring it back into that conversation at that point. Okay, is that fair?
Starting, leasing land so we can figure out what it is that's needed off island, mainland. On
Okay,
mainland.
so it helps us to figure out what's needed.
My name is Steve, and our table discussed a lot of, we are sort of in agreement so far with what everyone is saying about leasing, and the advantages of sort of testing the waters. The subject did come up, though, as to availability of lease space and how long they'll make us lease it for.
Okay, and we will definitely be talking about that in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so the conditions of the lease and stuff is something that we'll definitely need to consider, but the why question, testing the waters and allowing us to kind of see what's out there and what's needed. We will definitely get to some of those other things you talked about.
Okay.
Anything else out there? Go ahead.
We also just discussed about, I don't know if it's been looked at yet, but I'm just wondering if there are other facilities that are already built or another church that is underutilized as to at least temporarily using that location.
So we're going to talk, you're starting to lead into the next question, right? So I'll just summarize, though, for the whys, right? We've heard a little bit. Let's test the waters. Let's see what's out there. Let's see what's needed. But in the end, the why, build the core, right? Get a core out there established on the mainland that grows and allows us to be that presence on the mainland, right? So that's a real, kind of a summary, but that's a why we do it. Okay, let's go to our next question, Adrian.
Okay. So our next question is, what will we be doing in this location? And think about what your priorities would be. That kind of goes back to what Tessa alluded to. What kinds of activities, services, support will we see? So the question is, what? If you would talk at your table a little bit, and then we'll come back together.
Interesting. And I'm listening to a couple different tables, so. I'm going to start with her comment to say youth. Youth activities is something that could happen at this space. So I'll start with that. And, yeah. Okay. Bring it back a little bit. We'll get Steve ready to run. But when it comes down to what it is that we want to potentially achieve at this space, what do we want to do in the lease space? We're going to start with Tessa's comment, right? And that's youth activities. So youth activities, something that could happen there. What else could happen there?
Thank you, Steve. How about worship services?
Worship services. That sounds like a winner. Go ahead, there you go.
We were talking about education and then the outreach of the small groups.
Education and community outreach, or small group outreach. Go ahead.
Bible study groups.
Bible study as a specific part of the education, but Bible study
Right,
groups.
and then children nursery.
A nursery.
Family fun night or just parents' night out?
Okay, family focus, family fun night, or parents' night out.
So I've been in 4 of these meetings so far. This is the first group I've been in where what Jasmine just said, night, fun night, and then parent night out. And then another member here mentioned evening events. So this is the first group I've heard mention evening things.
Evening events.
But they're also maybe the first group where it wasn't mostly retired members. So.
People that work all day.
Yeah, and actually though, it does bring up, it brings up a kind of a side point with that, right? If you're talking about evening space and you're talking about day activities, you're probably talking about more of a full-time facility that's leased than a part-time facility that's leased, right? So that's something that we need to consider is full-time versus part-time, and depending on some of the activities that would take place at the lease space, that helps to drive some of what is needed to accomplish what we want to do.
From the medical standpoint, medical clinics and
It could-
screenings.
Sure,
for
medical clinics as a
in
community
extra
outreach.
Yep.
Yep.
Population in need of both body and soul healing.
Right?
We used to do both those things. We had parents' night out where one set of parents used to watch the kids, and they were anywhere from like 5 to 12 or 13. Tessa, I'm sure, remembers. And we watched movies or we played a game, and then the next month, another couple would watch all the kids, and so parents could have a date night. And the medical clinics. We used to do a blood pressure thing in between church services because Sherry Spicer was a nurse, and we had a little clinic, and if somebody's blood pressure was high, we didn't do anything but say, you need to go see your doctor. But then we checked people's blood pressures.
Okay, so again, these are activities that just kind of like what I'm hearing is everyone's saying kind of what we do here, what we do in every church, and more, because there's opportunity to continue to grow with different outreaches and different services for our congregation. What else?
Again, my name is Steve. We talked about a couple of things, and a lot of the stuff we reiterated, everything we're on the same page here. But one of the guys here mentioned, they also had the university there also as well, right? As far as maybe outreach to the university people.
Okay,
there.
outreach to university students.
And then I moved here from California. I lived in Bluffton for a year first before I moved to the island. Bluffton's got 8 million young families. I mean, they're just, it's crazy how many young
youth
families,
ministry,
yeah.
right? Youth focus, just like Tessa was saying.
And then it's not something you do right away, but it's something to really think about. There's got to be a demanding need for preschool.
Potentially preschool.
Yeah, I mean, because if this thing works out at all, you start, because I know parents are going to be swamped, to have some sort of preschool kind of situation. So anyway, that's...
Yeah?
Yeah, looking at what the church already does and publishes, and the, I believe that again, thinking that this needs to be focused, where the facility is or whatever it is, focused to be able to support what we're currently doing in an outreach to the community that we currently don't touch.
Okay.
And so everything that's in this book
so again,
is a possibility, depending on, financially, facilities available, things like that. The other thing is, though, that I think is really important to consider when you say full or part-time, is that it may mean that the sanctuary is also the community room, which is also the whatever. So we can't be closed-minded enough to think that we're trying to do temporary lease and make it look like a full-time facility.
Absolutely. Multi-use space.
Yeah, flexible. Yeah.
Right. Flexibility in space. Yeah. And I mean, you're all kind of hitting on it, right? And the key is that we could list pages and pages of things that we can do. But what has to happen is we have to figure out what the priority is. What's going to be the priority for the space, right? Again, lease space, it might be long-term. For me, long-term, because I live in the Hilton Head Plantation, so long-term is over 9 months. But because that's what they call a long-term lease, right? So, but in the end, it's still temporary. Right? The intent is still have this simultaneous approach. We're not going to talk about land and purchase of land today, but we're looking at a simultaneous approach, and we know that we need a lease because of the years it will take to put a building on any land that we get. Sorry,
Andy.
I'll come back to that. Go ahead.
This table mentioned leasing so temporarily it could be one-off events.
Okay.
In the community to gauge certain parties.
Leasing for one-off events. And to Wendell's point here, he just asked if it could be more than one space. So maybe there is more than one space. Maybe we get an admin space that's full-time, or we're able to accommodate some Bible study in a couple of rooms, and that's a full-time space, and then we go part-time for our service. And maybe we do part-time, we do the one-off events, and we do a part-time lease. So it doesn't have to be a space. It can be spaces, and we just manage to our needs and to what we want to accomplish. Right? So did we get? What else we got? Okay, we can put daycare on there. I just heard somebody say that. Anything else? Okay, so again, in the end, we're going to have to prioritize, right? So in the end, what did we talk about today? What did Pastor Jeff talk about in his sermon today? Make disciples of all nations, right? And how do we do that? We do it through worship and the word, right? So we baptize in worship and we do the word. So what does it sound like our priorities are? Worship, Bible study. That does not mean that we don't think community outreach is important, but maybe it's not the number one thing that we try to accomplish. Maybe first we get out there and try to get worship established and try to get some Bible study established. Bible study is already happening out there, right? So maybe we couple them together and that becomes our first priority. But these are the kinds of things that we have to think through and talk through. And we're going to get into more of that later when I get Pastor Jeff to come back up here and start talking in the share mode, start talking about what we've already found and what we've already discovered in terms of lease. Okay, so let's go to our next question.
So our final question is where? We all have a location in mind, and we have found it very interesting to get feedback across the board of where. So briefly talk about where do you see this occurring? Where would this space be? Thank you.
And in addition to where, this is where we talk about some of the conditions or considerations that we want in the space that we get, right? So, you know, we talked about, don't be afraid to think about where in terms of a retail space, for instance, or a school. So think about where, not just in terms of where my GPS is going to take me, but where in terms of what are the considerations for the facility that we might want to get. Okay, let's talk amongst yourselves and then we'll share. All right, let's bring everybody back together, and let's start sharing what do we think about for where. Who wants to go? Jack?
So I know this has been, I'm Jack Abernathy, and I know this has been brought up in meetings about, out Hardyville Way, somewhere like if we could lease the university facility, that would, but also, the Okatee area going out towards 170.
Hardyville, Okatee.
Yeah.
University maybe. USCB. Go ahead.
And, but having a building that would lease that can start that core, but yeah, that's.
Okay. Who else?
Anybody?
Whatever I'm told to do. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Thad. The where is a big question. Obviously, with this location we're at right now, the debate is something that's far enough away where you can properly expand, and then also thinking about, I think, from the last question of what is the whole purpose of this next location. So it's like, what are we doing here that we can't do here, and what will this next spot be doing out there? So it's a big question. There's a lot to discuss, and appreciate y'all.
So the key that I really got was far enough from here, right? So is Moss Creek far enough? Okay, so far enough from here. It needs to be out away from the island to make it more amenable to the population that's out 170, kind of out that way, right? I see the dust. Yeah, he's like, yeah. Remember us out here on 170? I remember. Okay. Oh, we got Dan in the back too next, Steve.
So two parts of this that looking at was the where was obviously the location. In other words, like a hotel, conference room, type stuff.
Okay.
So
hotel, conference room.
We talked about the education, school, cafeterias, whatever that you could use, a space that was big enough. But also, I believe that retail spaces. When I think about the Church of the Cross, where they've got God's goods. I mean, that was all retail spaces that have been divided up. So a retail space, if it suits the size or whatever what we think we need, should be considered. As far as physical location, I do know that I've done some research on this, is that the growth is happening between Okatee, 278, 170, and Buford. So that whole line is where I think a permanent facility may be. However, I don't think we should trap ourselves to say that a temporary or a lease facility needs to be there.
Okay, so let me hit a couple things so I can make sure Adrian can keep up. Okay, number one, 278, 170. That's like the center. I want to make sure that we capture the fact that the lease space does not have to be where the build space is.
Correct.
Okay, so that's something that we need to consider. And again, we're going to get more of this because right now we're talking, this is all great pie in the sky stuff. This is where, we want this spot right here. And we're going to, in the end, Jeff's going to come up here next with his ministry team, and he's going to tell us what reality is. Okay, so then we're going to get back and we're going to be able to say, yeah, that's a great plan, but.
Correct.
Right? So again, and the space, the retail space idea, absolutely we need to consider. So, okay, go ahead.
Correct. No, I was just going to say that the last thing is that, again, as you mentioned, I was going to say that should not define us as to where the permanent facility or lease facility, they should never have to be the same.
Right.
And we need to realize in the lease facility that it's flexible. And so it may be that 50% of the time before we build or whatever down the road, we might change the lease facility. So it may be temporary.
Lease facility could change.
And the size of the lease facility may have to go up.
And
so we
the
need
size
to be
may
prepared
change.
or something. So.
Great. So don't identify the lease space in our own heads as permanent. Right? That's what I'm hearing. And I'm hearing that it's going to grow or shrink or move with us as we grow and shrink and move and identify more of the what, right? We said that we're going to focus worship. We're going to make sure we can worship. We're going to make sure we can do some learning. All right, but then as we start getting to outreach and stuff like that, then maybe our space needs to change. Okay, go back to, I saw Dan. I still want to hear you talk, Dan. Come on, buddy, you got something for me. I got nothing.
This one's very eclectic. We thought it would be kind of cool to perhaps lend a spot where there's some cross-cultural things happening.
Okay, yeah, cross-cultural activities.
Yeah, maybe there's a church that belongs to an ethnic group that we are not very familiar with, and maybe we could lend them.
So I don't know if you all caught what he just said, but an existing church. Right? Doesn't have to, obviously there's not a Missouri Synod Lutheran Church out there, so we wouldn't be, if we went to another church, it would be something other than Missouri Synod Lutheran, right? Very doable though. Churches do it all the time. I know we did it up north. We allowed our church to be used by another denomination in the afternoons. So another church, that's a great point. And the idea that, maybe we can open ourselves and look into cultural centers, So you're saying not Sunday morning? I didn't say not Sunday morning, but I don't have to say, I could say not Sunday morning if somebody else says it, right? It doesn't, the key, right, you're right. We're not locked and loaded into just doing a Sunday morning service out there. It's all of it. It could be all over, right? We may see that the mainland starts having services on Saturday or on Tuesdays. I don't know, I have no idea, right? But it doesn't, we're not locked in. The where is not locked into a Sunday service necessarily. What else?
We also, I'm sorry, this is Steve again. We also discussed that as far as location not being too close, but also being in a location where we are closer to the people who are, going to come into church. In other words, when I moved here from California and I went to Bluffton first, that whole area about 170 and 278, it was just exploded. I mean, there was just, and one thing I noticed that they're in dire need of a lot of different kind of services, and I'm guessing they might even have a dire need of a church. I don't know. But I mean, and the other thing is we discussed if we go out that direction, it's sort of like a triangle hub. If we get out there far enough, we can get people coming from all different directions to that church as far as location.
So again, I keep hearing all that, right? There's a lot of development, a lot of building out that 170 area. Okatee, Hardyville, there's Beaufort, all that space out there, a lot of building.
And the last thing on that issue also is that the closer you get to the island, the more expensive things are.
That's true. So cost is a factor, right? That's a consideration that we have to take into account when we talk about the where. Cost matters, and Jeff is going to cover a little bit of that as well. What else or where else? What else do we have to consider? Parking, right? Okay, parking, got to consider, can't have a church with no parking, right? So, especially, when you start thinking about retail and commercial space, you got to see kind of who your co-tenants are and how that's going to work for parking, right?
Andy, we would love visibility.
Visibility. So the space that we lease needs to have visibility, right? And that kind of also bleeds back into that, what we're trying to achieve, right? We want to make sure that we're building a core, but we want to make sure that people know we're building a core, right? So we want to make sure people know we're out there, that Missouri Synod now has a place of worship on the mainland. What else? I'm a little disappointed. Go ahead. Yeah, you gotta wait.
Well, as soon as I heard Andy say visibility, just popped in my head that there are plenty of the retirement homes that have large facilities inside.
Yep.
And so I did mention it earlier, but I would say that we might want to consider looking at some of these retirement community homes, the nursing home type stuff, where they have large facilities that would facilitate worship size service.
Absolutely.
Because I think the visibility being on a main drag, in other words, having people see that you have services in there becomes an attraction.
Okay, so looking at retirement communities or existing developments that have a large space that would be able to be rented.
So many steps today. So I have two, bars and distilleries.
Thank you. I've been waiting for that.
Because I'm looking for some
Now
bourbon.
I'm in,
It's cool.
okay? Bars and distilleries.
But also homes.
Homes, great point.
Just starting
right?
small.
Lots of, that's, hey, didn't Jesus used to send people out to make a home church first, and you start with your home? But on the bars, I mean, the other groups brought up bars as well. And I don't want to dismiss it because there's actually a church now that's building that started meeting in a bar. So it's not something we should just immediately dismiss. My wife and I just took a cruise in Germany, and we were coming down, and as we were sitting up top, and they were telling us about the castles and everything else, and Van Dundrens were with us, but they told us there's this great big place over there. They said, yep, that's a bar right there. And he said, right next to it, attached to the bar, there's a church. The only way to get to the church is through the bar.
That's awesome.
The mayor of the town, the bartender, and the pastor are all the same guy. I like the business model here. Andy, we can teach you how to make drinks. It's okay, buddy.
So I was just going to say, we live right behind USCB, and our house is the size of a postage stamp, but you all are more than welcome to come and worship at our house.
There you go. But house churches, home churches are a thing. It's, you know, and I'm sure Jeff's got stories for that too.
You're saying that the Bird Church Distillery is prophetic?
Bird Church Distillery has already been discussed and looked at, and what they are is cost prohibitive. Because they want us to pay for the entire facility for the entire day. That's a big nut, by the way, in case you were wondering.
All alcohol included.
Yeah. $10K a day. That's what's included, yeah. What else? Anything? Okay, so here's what I want to do. We're running right just a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. Let's take about 5 to 8 minutes, get a bio break and get a stretch break, and then we'll come back, and then we're going to go into the sharing mode. Thank you. I didn't. That's what I think. I love the idea. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm watching the time. We're right. We're doing good.
Oh, I'm still tired.
All right. Let's, if I can get everybody to come on back towards the sheets, and then, I'm going to ask Pastor Jeff to come up. Like I said, he's had some ministry teams working on Lease and exploring opportunities, and so I'll ask him to come up and him and his team to share some information with us about what they've been finding.
Hello, everybody. So on your table in the center, there should be some sheets. Make sure everyone has one. If we don't have one, then I can give you an extra one. So let's take a moment and make sure everyone gets one of those in front of them. So you'll have to forgive me. We're getting very, very close to Pastor Jeff nap time. So Sunday afternoons, I'm usually worthless. Just ask my wife. I'm generally worthless any other time, but especially on Sunday afternoons. If I could, though, it has been an exciting week, and what I'd like to do is just take you down a journey with me. And what I would like you to do is think about it's 2025, right? So what I want you to do is think about 1985. Now, immediately in 1985, you can start thinking about where you were at. Holly, were you even a teenager? 2 years old? Spare me. Slap that child. All right, so 1985, and what I'd like you to do is think about not only where you were at personally, but where was this church at? And what I want you to do is to go down that journey with me. I've done a little bit of research, and I've done this at the 3 previous sessions. And so what I'd like to do is tell you what happened. In 1985, a retired pastor from the St. Louis area came here. And that retired pastor noticed there was not a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod presence on the island. Nothing. And so he came out of retirement and he contacted the church body. He contacted the district and the national church body and asked if he could start a church. And the first church started in the home of Barbara English, and there were just a few families. Does anybody go back to the church in Barbara English's home? Well, so just look around the room. It wasn't that much longer. About 6 months to a year later, the church moved into, well, I affectionately call it the bar, the Port Royal Clubhouse. The Sunday school was in the bar. Go figure, put your kids in where the alcohol is. So does anybody go back to Port Royal Clubhouse in the room? There we go. Were you a little kid then, Jack? Yeah, I was young. He was in the bar, that's right. All right, now I want you to think about this. One hand has gone up so far. In 1992, Easter, not this room, but the sanctuary and the entryway, the first worship service was held, 1992. In fact, I know someone here attended that service for the very first time they come into this church. Who was here in 1992 at Easter? So now we've added another couple. Kathy and Steve White were here in 1992. So when you walk through Grace's office, there was no narthex. You were walked into the church. Now, I share this with you. Why do you think I'm sharing this with you? Yeah. And to show you that this takes time. And to show you that it takes people. And it's the Lord's plan. The Lord sent a pastor down here who put it on his heart and then started gathering some people. Little steps were taken and then bigger steps. In fact, the building we're in, right, this part of the building was right around 2002, I believe. And the preschool, I met somebody who worshiped at our church today, hadn't been here in 20 years. Their kids were in your class, Dia. David and something were the parents. Yeah, modular units first. Yeah. Now, what I want you to think with me about is, that was 1985, 1986, 1992, 2002, and all along the while, God had a plan. And God has brought us to this place. And so here we are. We're a much bigger group gathering together. With today's numbers, we'll be well over 125 people having gathered to talk and pray and to answer questions. It's very exciting for me personally. And undoubtedly, there were lots of doubts and maybe even a little bit of what are you thinking back then, and that's okay. I will tell you a little bit about that pastor. So I know a little bit about him because this man is recognized in our church body. This wasn't his first rodeo. He was a mission planter. He planted a church in the St. Louis area that is still very prominent, very, very effective church. In fact, if you go right over there on the plaque on the wall, right by the water cooler, you can see that that church partnered and helped out with this as a representative of the larger church body. Now, in 2020, in January, Mary and I, well, I did. Mary had to stay up north for our kids, and COVID hit. But when I came down here, I can honestly tell you, I anticipated that this would happen. I just didn't know when. And I also can tell you that this isn't my first rodeo. And you need to know that when I was a very young man in my 20s, even younger than you, dude, I was called a missionary, and the missionary team was Jeff, Mary, and a 6-month-old child. There was no core. And so the three of us were off to Brentwood. Remember, Mayor? In fact, Mary gave birth about the weekend I took the call. How's that one for you, pastors' wives? Talk about unpopular decisions. But God blessed it. I was there 5 years. A church was planted. We moved on to Tracy when it was organized. I did go back and had the privilege of preaching for their big preschool and recreation center where they held worship years later. We went to Tracy, California, and they wanted to start a school. And again, those were beautiful learning moments. The school, Bella Vista Christian Academy, is now some 350 to 400 kids strong. They have a senior center there. We were so blessed to be a part of that. And then when we went to West Bend, they wanted to start an early childhood center and daycare center. And our plan was to fill it up within 3 years, and in 3 months, it was full of almost 200 kids. And now that school has grown so big, and the daycare, that they're expanding and going through what we're going through. While in West Bend, we also started a satellite ministry, just like we're doing. And I tell you that just to let you know, this is not my first rodeo, but more importantly, to tell you that this isn't God's first rodeo. I mean, the Lord's been doing this for generations, all around the world. And we just are privileged to be a part of a growing church. We're privileged to be a part of a church that actually takes seriously the Great Commission, go make disciples. And so we're going to all work through this together. My experience leads me to some positions that we're going to talk about today. And so if you look under the purpose, could you read those words? The first word is create. On 3, would you read those words aloud with me? Create the core for the long-term site. This is the lease purpose. So let's read it again. Create the core for the long-term site. Now I say that because it's very important for you to understand, because this is not my first rodeo, I can tell you there are a lot of different ways to start a site. And there are a lot of different ways to start using a lease. But we're doing it based off of what God's already been doing. Do you know how many times, I mean, just imagine how many times people have come up to me and said these words: I invite my neighbors, I invite my friends, but they won't go across the bridge. They will not drive 30 minutes, especially families with kids. Kevin and Holly have experienced this firsthand. What'd you say? Go get a bus. So the reality is we have at least half, probably closer to 2/3 of our family over across the bridge, and many of them have said, if we were to have a site here, we would invite our friends, and they would come to worship with us. Simultaneously, we have a growing number of people who are elderly or infirmed who have told me, Pastor, I won't be doing this for the next 5 years. I can't keep coming all the way here. And so you just look at the really remarkable opportunity the Lord is providing for us to reach into new lives and also provide ministry for the ones that God has brought us. So once again, the purpose, read it out loud, create the core for the long-term site. So the long-term site is why we're doing simultaneously buying land and leasing. You'll need to come to the land buying to hear a lot more details. I'll make some general allusions today. But this tells us our approach. And I've heard a lot of good things. But we're going to use the approach called staging, or walking before you run, if you will. What do I mean by that? Well, some of you have said it: flexibility, adaptability, what is cost, all of these things. We're trying to look at what are the different options, because, by the way, if you haven't figured it out, we could do something on a Sunday morning in a gymnasium, set up, take down, and not rent anything during the week. Just continue doing what we're doing in houses and in restaurants over at USCB. That cost is what? Really low. If we go into a retail space and get something there that we have 7 day a week, which is what we did in California and in Wisconsin, that cost is really high. So we're considering all options, and Dave will give you updates in a minute. But speaking about staging then leads us to think about considerations. And some of the considerations for the lease have already come up. I think it must have been a German who created this document. Why do I say it's a German? Because what's the first consideration? Price. Now, I'm telling you, it must have been a German or maybe a Scotch. And oh, by the way, I'm both. Now, I say that because we've got to take and consider what is the price. There's a big range. And by the way, we are so blessed at this church to have a leadership ministry board that is concerned about managing the Lord's resources appropriately. And we also have a staff that is intentional about this as well. And frankly, I'll say this again, but this church is so blessed with the 20 to 25 hours a week that Dave Grant, who has a whole career background in business, with his finger right on the pulse of this. And no, you're not getting up yet. But it's your nap time. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes it's bad guy, good guy, and Dave likes to be the, no, we're not doing that. And I'm the guy who says, oh, I think we can do that. No, we're not doing that. And this is how it goes around here. So we'll work this out. God will let us know. But there are other considerations. Size. 5,000 square feet, just so you can get a sense of 5,000 square feet. This room, plus the classrooms over there, that's about 5,000 square feet. So that should give you a little bit of an idea. No, that's 10,000, you say. Now, the whole church is 10. From this wall over here is 5,000 square feet. So if you just think about this space here on the east wing, and this right here is about 5,000 square feet. Now, why do I tell you that? Because that's probably will allow us to have worship and some classrooms and some possible offices and ministry things. 10,000 square feet. 10,000 square feet is about, just for kicks, about the building. So that'll give you that. Now, why are we using that range? Quite frankly, it's not because it's out there. We're having a dickens of a time finding this. We are struggling greatly, but I have experience both first in California with a 5,000 square foot retail space. We outgrew it. Then we went into a 10,000 square foot industrial space. Remember that, Mayor? We had to exercise it. It was an old bingo hall. And we took a bingo hall and got rid of all the smoke. And it became a great place. So is a 10,000 square foot space better than a 5,000 square foot space? Whoever said that, you're a genius. Depends. It depends on cost. It depends on other things. And so I'm just giving you an idea of some of the things we're thinking about. We're also thinking about parking. The reality is parking is a consideration for Bluffton area, Okatee, for this island. It's just plain hard. And so we're trying to figure out something that will provide us while we're waiting. It's about a 3 to 4 year time period to build out once we buy the land. What could we have that could give us appropriate parking? Finally, location. You know, obviously you guys are very smart people. It would not be wise for us to consider Moss Creek. The people on the mainland are just going to keep driving to get over here. And by the way, I'm looking at this crowd. Most of you are from the island. Who are the mainland people that are here? There you go. So we should start asking them how long they have to drive versus, you know, Mary, how long does it take you to get here? Depends on who's behind the wheel. Yeah, I think you should continue driving. So the whole point is that location, we're looking at the 278-170 corridor, if you consider that like an epicenter, and then around that, about 30-minute drive. Probably closer to Buckwalter West. So location, though, also includes things like other things like, are we looking at schools, et cetera? I'll let Dave address that. In fact, now would be the time, Mr. Grant. I'm going to come back and finish off the financials, but Dave's going to take you through progress to date and then where we're sitting operationally.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me back there, Alan? Okay. So, you're going to adjust that, put that down. Yeah. As far as, if you look at your sheet and it says that there's 20 options reviewed, and really today I can say that we have 23 that we've reviewed. When this was first prepared, we've done 3 more. And when I say we, it's Pastor Andy and I. We've either done it individually or as together. We've done it by phone calls, by looking at websites, and by visits at specific sites. So we've been pretty busy the last few weeks. We've gone anywhere from Saul's funeral home in Bluffton, those of you that are aware of that. We visited churches, we visited schools, we've made phone calls and talked to various other retail stores. We visited some retail spaces that are available. So how many of you have worshiped in your church careers in a non-church, in a storefront, or a school? So you have to be adaptable. You have to, really appreciate your faith and be looking forward to the future through, to growth. But it's a different experience. Right now, all of these 23, we've put in requests to really lease their space. On 3 of them, 1 has already said no. We've got 2 more, which are actually 2 Methodist churches on 170. 1 is an AME church. And Pastor Andy and I will be going out there Wednesday after we visit the Bluffton High School. So we're actively pursuing a lot of different options. And later on, if you have some questions or some of the suggestions that have come up, we'd be glad to address those. As far as the price range for the retail spaces, and you realize that churches and schools are kind of very, very different. They're very much more reasonable, if you want to call it that. But retail spaces, people need to make money, and we understand that. As far as the range so far, we've got $13 a square foot for an annual lease basis. And on the high end, we're up at about $45 a square foot. So if you take the $5,000 or the $10,000, it's a pretty big range. I would say we would wind up somewhere, $150,000 to $200,000 a year for leasing a retail space. Retail spaces are good in some cases. The ones we've looked at really, they're not necessarily, the cost is there, of course, but the parking is not always, amenable to somebody that's, if we have 75 people, 100 people at church. So as far as the three requests I just mentioned, and what we're looking at and what we're asking for primarily right now is a space for worship, and then a space for at least 2 rooms so that we can do Bible studies, and 1 day a week, which would be Sunday. A couple times you've heard Burnt Church. Everybody was excited about Burnt Church at one of these meetings. They do want us to lease Sundays for $10,000. So if you start to say we have 52 Sundays, I think that you got to take that in perspective. And that kind of gets me into the numbers on this sheet where they're in blue, the financial numbers. Just a real quick recap. I mean, if you look at our giving, we're slightly below what we felt we were going to budget for, but we are ahead of 2024. As far as expenses, very much in control. And a lot of this has to do with timing, and particularly the fourth quarter, we do a lot of spending on our missions. And then we've also had Kevin on leave of absence. So there's some disparity there. But overall, we're in a very strong financial position. We have no mortgage. So if you look at the stability in our financial position, we look at that as continuing. So you see down below that, those 2 bullet points, the mainland online ministry fund balance, $518,000. So that's, we will be spending out of that, first of all, as we begin to move forward. But I'll talk a little bit more, and Jeff will finish up on that, about that. And then as far as the current ministry fund, we also have money there. So that's separate, and that's set aside, that's designated for those 2 areas. And, just a comment, we're still keeping, our maintenance on this building is still going on. We spent about $92,000 on a new roof this year from damage from last year's hurricane that came through, the after effects of that. And we've also replaced, we have many air handling units, so those of you that have homes here know what air handling units cost, so we replaced one for $14,000 this year. So we're still maintaining and growing the ministry here. As far as, so when you look at $518,000, that's nice, but when you start to think about leasing and what that costs, and potentially buying, and you'll hear about that at the land meetings, but we're talking about a lot of money. So what are we going to do? So how are we going to get there? And let me just prime the pump. I feel that we continue to grow. And our growth has been steady over the past 5 years, and even before that, we've continued to grow. We will need a capital campaign, and Jeff will go into detail on that. And we are partnering with LCEF, Lutheran Church Extension Fund, and they're helping us in ministry expansion as well as the preparation for a capital campaign. We also are looking at we're not looking, but we're partnering with the foundation, the LCMS Foundation, with the legacy funds. As far as, grants, we're looking at the potential of grants, and I understand that they may not be for the building, it may be for staff and other programs that we have to run. But and then we always can get a loan. If it's not from LCEF, we can get a mortgage. So there's a lot of different financial mechanisms in place that we can utilize. I mean, when I've moved around a lot, when you buy a house, you have your finances in order, otherwise the bank isn't going to approve it. And so we need to work with the bank And that'll be LCEF giving us guidance and working with us and what we can afford and what we can't as we go forward. As far as questions about the leases, you know, I haven't gotten, or we haven't gotten as far yet with sitting down and negotiating the length of time or the specifics. You know, we've gotten some broad costs from the retail spaces, but in looking at some of the churches and the we need to talk to them further about what they're going to charge. We got some broad ideas about what it's going to be, and it's a range, but it's not as big a range as you see here, not as high as I should say. So I'll answer questions later, or Jeff is going to wind things up.
That was good. That was a very good hint, Dave. Wind things up. So, if you could, I just want you to spend a minute at your table. First worship service. How many people are going to attend at that? When we get a site, a worship, we hold worship out there. How many people are going to attend at that first service? Give it a range: 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 to 200. What's it going to be? Talk at your table quickly. 30 seconds. Ten seconds. All right, we got to get some numbers. So let's start it off over here. From the people that mostly live over in Bluffton, it'll be 5 people, I've heard. No. What? All right, there you go. All right, we got to get a number. What's your number? Range? 50 to 100. Did anybody else say 50 to 100? Okay. All right, we got a different number. Anyone else have a different number? 100 to 200. There you go. Over 200. All right. For the first service. All right. So anybody else got numbers? So I have spent quite a bit of time talking to Pastor Zimmerman about this, because this isn't his first rodeo either. And I can tell you, most of you are on the low side. Those that talked more in the 100+ side are more in line. But I'll let him share with you some of his thoughts. It was a trick question. Really, the question isn't what's the service attendance on the first time. It's what is it after 6 months. 6 months, because you have everybody, Mary and I remember this, everybody wants to check it out when you get something going. But what's it going to be like after it settles in? It's a really important question, because research scientifically has shown that it doesn't matter what denomination it is. The ceiling for churches' worship attendance in their life is 10 times, the ceiling is 10 times what your original worship is. And why is that important? Well, if you start with 300, through 30, your ceiling will be 300. Now, I bring that to you because, again, it's very hard for anybody to know. In fact, I'd suggest none of us know exactly. But I can tell you what Pastor Jeff hopes for. You know what I'm hoping for? I'm hoping for, after 6 months, there is a solid 150 over there on the mainland. And for those of you that are here on the island and you say, Pastor Jeff, you're praying for the doom of our church. Not a least bit. I fundamentally believe that if we have 150 attendance over there and our attendance on the island is at 100, it will fill in, and before you know it, we're going to have 2 congregations that are strong, well over 200 in attendance. And that's what I believe in my heart. It's also what I've experienced. And so I want you to know that ultimately it's in the Lord's hands, but this is an exciting time. Dave referenced a campaign. This ministry expansion campaign is being worked on right now by the board and the staff. We're working with the Lutheran Church Extension Fund. How many of you have participated in some form of 3-year campaign at your church or other? Wow, there you go. We have all right, people, you are good. And no, that doesn't mean you get a pass. Because the truth be told, Mary and I have participated in 7 campaigns, and this will be our 8th. And I can tell you, it's a beautiful, holy, it's a challenging, prayerful time. And you've heard me say it, and I'll say it again. It is not going to be browbeating, arm twisting, legalism, guilting. I will not be a part of that. Because what it's going to be is a beautiful time of prayer and reflection and celebration that it's all His, and people coming forward with what they believe in their heart God has put on their heart to give. And I can tell you, people give from 2 places. One pocket, their operations. We're going to not take that trip. Or, oh, we're going to hope the car lasts a little longer. Or, oh, we're going to squeeze back. That's the one pocket. What's the other pocket? Savings, investments. And there are people that are already making their legacy gifts to this church, and I would highly recommend you meet with Dr. Denninger. He's coming again in September and in October. But the fact is, people who give legacy gifts, Mary and I are, you take a portion of it and say, we're going to give it now. And you give it now, trusting that the Lord will take care of it in the long run, and ultimately it's in His hands. So where does this leave us? We're right where we belong. We are right where we belong. And our conversations will continue. We're going to be talking about the land next. I highly, highly recommend you get word out so that we can come together. The board and the staff are very accessible. I'd be honored to sit down with any of you personally.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. Hey, now what we're going to do is we're going to ask Adrian to come up and tell us what is it that we all should be doing now? What do we each need to do and all need to do both individually and together?
Okay. Thank you very much. So here we are. We've heard lots of good information, lots of input. Each of the groups that we've worked with tell me that we are a unified church, because even though each group had unique considerations, and today we heard ideas that we didn't hear in the other groups, and likewise, yet we all have the purpose and the voice that we want to move forward. We want to support discipleship. We want to see the love of God in our community in a broader way. So what are we asking you to do? This is the deploy strategy. The first thing that we are asking of each of you individually and of us collectively is that we pray, that we consider the needs that God knows that we have, and also consider the needs that perhaps do not represent your personal household, but represent us as a church. We also want to leave our hearts and minds open to the development of this new expansion ministry in ways that we cannot imagine at this time, but will grow beyond us. Just as Jeff discussed, think about 1985 and look at where we are today, and how the ideas that we embody now could not be envisioned then. So we ask each of you to be prayerful. The next thing that we ask each of you to do is to be an ambassador, to be enthusiastic about what you represent in our church family. You might represent folks who are just starting out. You might represent folks who are in the final chapters. You might represent those folks who are in the middle and being pushed on both sides. You know, wherever you are in life, you have a unique voice and a unique perspective. You are active in our community. Your family is in our schools. Your husbands and wives are working. Your children are growing. So we need you to be a positive force. The last thing that we need you to do is to make connections, and we need you to have your eyes and ears open so that unique ideas that will come forward will be considered, and perhaps those unique ideas will be the answer. We're not sure. We want to keep an open mind. Please communicate with the folks that are in leadership positions here at the church and also the Leadership Ministry Board. Please have conversations and keep an open mind and heart. So we're asking you to do 3 things: to be prayerful, to be positive ambassadors, and to make meaningful connections. Thank you.
And to that connection end, you know, if you have people that, you know, I know somebody who owns a distillery, you know, and might be willing. So I wish I did. But do share those contacts with anybody on the LMB or Pastor Jeff or Dave or Pastor Andy, because they will track them down. So if you have those kinds of connections, that's how that some of this can happen. The other thing I'm going to add to what Adrian said is that we want to make sure that you stay informed, okay? And that means that we need a two-way communication. So we need to keep hearing from you. We need to make sure that if you've got ideas or you got thoughts or opinions, share them with us. We fully recognize that, as Adrian said, we are unified. We have a very common mission. We know our mission, knowing and sharing the joy of salvation of Christ. We know that, you know that, and we share that. We will always be unified on that. But we will never be unanimous in opinion and in thought. And it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we want you to recognize that. Continue to talk to us. We do listen to everybody. We do process. We share that information with everybody. Just because we don't act on a suggestion doesn't mean we didn't consider it or hear it, right? But there is, you know, we have all of us, and we make decisions as a group, as a board, with staff's help, and that's the path we go. And like I said, we have to prioritize. We can't do it all at one time. So the other half of that is, as a board, we commit to making sure that we share information with you. So like we did over these meetings, you now got an update on Lease. You got an update on a lot of stuff that's been going on, and we need to continue to do that. So as we go down this road, we need to make sure that we share information with you to keep you informed. And that's on us. I'm now going to ask Pastor Jeff to come back up before he falls asleep in his chair and close us out.
So praying is so important because ultimately this is God's plan. We're going to just give you a few moments of quiet, and then we'll close off with the family prayer. So let's go into the Lord individually, and then we'll come together with the prayer He's taught us. Lord, remember us in your kingdom and teach us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Again, thank you all for coming.